सकता है। सूरह मुल्क वो सूरत है जिरी बंदे नू कब्र ने इजाफ नू इंशाअल्लाह 85 ते 9 to 10 बजे फिर शेख इरफान दा रोज़ दर्स होंदा है। उस बाद जिस रहना है तो वो फिर क़ियाम रमज़ान भी इंशाअल्लाह जमात के नाल वितर के नाल इंशाअल्लाह पर्सन बारकाल्लाहु फीकुम। Those of you may or may not be aware, but try to use your time wisely in this blessed month. These days and hours will pass very quickly. In Ramadan we have this program 8:30 every day. We have Isha Jama'ah, and then we have Surah Mulk. It takes 6-7 minutes to recite that, so it's not a lot of time and a lot of blessings and reward in that. The surah, as you mentioned, is known as the Murji'ah, the surah which protects a person from the punishment in the grave. So this is a good habit for the Muslims to do every night. And then we have a lesson every day, 9 till 10 approximately, Shaykh Irfan. And those who want to stay thereafter can stay for the Qiyam Ramadan prayers, inshallah. As you know, the Qiyam Ramadan prayers are an optional prayer. And the Prophet ﷺ used to pray 2 rak'ahs at a time, and used to encourage us to pray 2 rak'ahs at a time. And sometimes he would pray that at home on his own, sometimes he would pray in the mosque. So you can pray as many as you like. Scholars differed and companions narrated different things, what they saw. Some narrated 8 rak'ahs, some more than that. Then later on in the time of Umar, he gathered the people behind one imam praying 20 rak'ahs. This is known as a bid'ah, an innovation, but it's a good innovation, a good practice that Umar radiallahu anhu started. So from this is what is known as the Taraweeh prayer. So when the Muslims pray Taraweeh, generally they refer to these 20 rak'ahs in the month of Ramadan. But you can pray any 2, 4, 6, 8, as much as you like. And these are known as the Qiyam of Ramadan, extra additional optional prayers. But final note, the priority though goes to your obligatory prayers. If a person has fard prayers, qada prayers to make up, then this is a priority. The scholar said the one who leaves out the obligations so he can focus on sunnah and nafil things, optional things, then this person is a foolish person, he is deluded. So he's not excused because the obligations are priority. So if you left your optional things out to do the obligatory, then that's fine. You have an excuse, you're not blamed. But the other way around, then this is a foolish person. They should be focusing firstly on fulfilling the obligatory prayers and other matters first. Barakallahu fikum. La ilaha illallah, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. المرجية.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. We ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to grant us all the sincere intentions. A sincere intention is, for example, to have in the heart that I am here to attain Islamic knowledge because the Prophet ﷺ encouraged it. Or to say, I am here because the Prophet ﷺ encouraged for Muslims to meet in this way. Or a person has in his or her heart that it is rewardable to hear Islamic knowledge, to seek to increase one's understanding. All of these are valid intentions. So we collectively, whether listening, teaching, seeking to increase our Islamic knowledge, wanting to be in a gathering of Islamic knowledge for the blessings, because this is something that the Prophet ﷺ recommended and ordered. All of this is rewardable. So we intend now for the sake of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, so that one of us wouldn't just be sitting in the gathering without the proper intention and hence not gain any reward for having sat for close to 50 minutes and not having the proper intention and hence not getting the reward that they could have got. It's important for a person that when they do the deeds of righteousness, that they do not intend to seek the pleasure of the people, that they do not intend to attain the acceptance of the people, to please the people, such that then the people will praise them. This is an enormous sin. A sin because of committing this sin, a person deserves punishment in hellfire. We said in the past, this is known as insincerity. We seek the protection of Allah from this sin. Ameen. It is mentioned in a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that 3 men will come forward on the Day of Judgment during their holding to account, when they will need to answer for what they did in this life. They will be asked what they did. So the first one will step forward, or it will be his turn. And he will be asked what he did in this life. He will say, أَنَا قَرَأْتُ الْقُرْآنِ, I recited the Quran, which is a religiously rewardable deed, given that the person has the correct intention. On the Day of Judgment, he will say, أَنَا قَرَأْتُ الْقُرْآنِ, I recited the Quran, وَأَقْرَأْتُهُ فِيكَ يَا رَبِّ, he will say, and I taught other people for the sake of Allah. لِأَجْلِكَ يَا رَبِّ طَاعَةً لَكَ, I did it for Allah. I did it, and what drove me to do it was to gain the acceptance of Allah. What pushed me to do it was nothing more than obeying Allah. وَعَلَّمْتُهُ فِي اللَّيْلِ, and I taught it in the night, وَالنَّهَارِ, and during the day, رَجَاءَ ثَوَابِكَ, hoping for reward from Allah. So this person will understand from the kalam of Allah that he is lying. You are a liar. This person will be told, you only recited it so that people would say about you that you are a qari, that you recite the Quran. And indeed this was said. You achieved that, you gained that, you attained that which you intended. Like the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam, وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى, every single person will have what they intended. He intended the pleasure of the people, he intended the praise of the people, he will be told on the day of judgment, وَقَدْ قِيلْ, indeed you wanted to be called a qari', a reciter, and indeed it was said. The Prophet ﷺ said, ثُمَّ يُؤْمَرُ بِهِ إِلَى النَّارِ. Then the angels will be ordered to take him to the fire of hell. Then another person, he will be asked, مَاذَا فَعَلْتَ? What did you do? Remember, before we go any further, that the kalam of Allah, tabaraka wa ta'ala, which is an attribute of Allah, it is unimaginable. We don't say about Allah ta'ala that Allah has a voice, wal-'iyadhu billah, because people, the jinn, the angels, even animals, you could say, they have voices. Allah is the creator of these things. Allah is not attributed with a voice. Likewise, the kalam of Allah is not a language, neither Arabic nor any other language. Allah is the creator of languages. On the day of judgment, people will understand what is suitable to their situation. So when we read these hadiths, when the companions understood these hadiths, they knew that it means that Allah Ta'ala has an attribute which is His kalam. It's without a beginning. It's without an end. It is not a voice. It is not sounds. Because all of these things are creations. But the slaves, we on the Day of Judgment, the males and the females, the young and the old, we will all be able to understand. We will understand what is appropriate to our situation. If we were sinful, then we will understand that we are being reprimanded. If we did things that were good, then insha'Allah, we will understand that this was something good and that we are not being reprimanded. So this is very important to mention or to understand when mentioning a hadith like this. So, the second person, he will understand that he is being asked, what did you do? And he will say, Ya Rabb, Anta a'taytani malan, a'taytani malan kathira. Ya Allah, you gave me a lot of money. You gave me a lot of money, Ya Allah. فَأَنْفَقْتُهُ عَلَى رَحِمِي. And I distributed it. I spent this money that you gave me, Ya Allah. I spent it on my family members. i.e., I supported them. My dependents that relied upon me, I provided the obligatory support for them. And those of my family members that were in need, meaning they didn't have their basic needs. Perhaps they didn't have shelter or didn't have food. They were actually poor. I spent this money on them, Ya Allah. وَأَنْفَقْتُهُ عَلَى الْفُقَرَاءِ. And this money I spent it on the poor people. وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. And those that have nothing. وَأَنْفَقْتُهُ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And I spent this money, donating it in the way of Allah. For your sake, Ya Allah. Think about this. On the Day of Judgment, a person, people will be very, very afraid on the Day of Judgment. Either some people perhaps will know the reality of the situation, and now because they're afraid, they've convinced themselves that in the worldly life, this is why I used to do it. Because they're afraid. So without knowing, they may be lying through their teeth. Because look at the situation of the first person. He seemed like he was convinced. He said, Ya Allah, kuntu aqra'u al-Qur'ana wa aqra'tuhu wa fil layli wa fil nahari. In the day and in the night I would recite it. One might say with such confidence. But then he was told, Kadhabta, you liar. And this person also that said, Ya Rab, a'taytani malan kathiran. Ya Allah, you gave me a lot of money. As though this person is now praising Allah for having given him. This person is almost thanking Allah. That, Ya Allah, you are the one that gave me a lot of money. Alhamdulillah, Ya Allah. Alhamdulillah. And I spent it in the proper way on my family members that were poor and on the poor people and where it was needed Islamically. That's where I spent it. And it will be said to him, Kadhabta, you're a liar. Rather, you gave this money. You spent this money and made people know about it so that they would say that he's generous. So that they say that he just gives and gives and gives. Then this person, the order will come and the angels will drag this person to hellfire. This Muslim, he says, La ilaha illallah. He's someone who believed in La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, but he will be dragged to hellfire to carry out his sentence, to carry out, to, let's say, live out what he deserves and what Allah has eternally willed for him to stay in hellfire for. And then a third person, he will be asked, what did you do? He'll say, Rabb, oh my Lord, خرجت للقتال في سبيلك للجهاد. Ya Allah, I fought for your sake. In the proper way, which has rules that need to be learned. He said, he will say, and the Prophet is telling us about this. This was revealed to him that it would happen in the future, on the Day of Judgment. This is among what will happen, among what people will see happening. He said, he will say, خرجت للقتال في سبيلك, that I fought for your sake. فقاتلت, and I fought in al-jihad. حتى قتلت, until I was killed. مقبلا غير مدبر, I was face to face with the enemy. I didn't have my back to them and was running away. No, I was in the heat of the battle. I was where it was all happening. I was there and I did it for your sake, Ya Allah. He will say, فَعَلْتُ هَذَا طَمَعًا فِي جَنَّتِكَ. Ya Allah, I did it in hope of your paradise, that you would grant me paradise. And it will be said to him, كذبت, you're a liar. فعلت ليقال لك شجاع جريء. You did that so that people would say about you that you were brave and you were a warrior. That was the intention that was deep, deep, deep in your heart. That's what drove you. That was the incentive. That's what pushed you to do this. So such a person who goes out to fight for the sake of Allah, if they don't have the correct intention, then instead of gaining martyrdom, instead of becoming a shaheed of the battlefield and having all of one's sins forgiven and having a very high status, instead of all of this, this person, he would die as a major sinner, an enormous sinner. Then it will be said, وَقَدْ قِيلَ, and it was said, after you died, truly it was said, people thought you were a shaheed and that you were brave. They said that about you. Truly, they said that about you. But then the order of Allah will come and the angels will take this person to the fire of hell. This Muslim will be taken to hell. And he will stay there for as long as Allah eternally willed for him to stay. Then eventually, these Muslims, as we know, no Muslim remains in hellfire forever without an end. The Muslims are brought out of hellfire eventually, if they entered it. So a person should always stay aware of their intention. Because the heart of a person, it changes quickly. Its inclinations, you want to do, you don't want to do. You want to go, you don't want to go. You want to eat it, you don't want to eat it. You feel this way about this person, and now you feel another way. Oh, you feel that way again. Very quickly. Within a couple of seconds, you might go left and right, maybe 6 or 7 times. Intentions change. You did something for the sake of Allah. It would make another Muslim happy. You saw that they didn't smile, your intention changed. These things happen. The intentions change. A person may start a deed for the sake of Allah. They might start it for the sake of Allah, but then very quickly their intention flips. And instead of being sincere, now they are insincere. And this happens a lot. Some of the scholars said, لاحظ قلبك. Pay attention to your heart. لاحظ نفسك. Pay attention to your soul. Because sometimes the soul whispers to you too. That which I am doing right now. Why am I doing it? If I'm doing it, if I'm reciting the Quran, or I'm doing another good deed, let's say, without an intention for the sake of Allah, I'm not getting any reward. I'm not sinful, but I'm not getting any reward. So I might as well get reward, so let me make a good intention. But at the same time, I'm always watching. Let me not get too excited, as you might say. Let me always guard my intention. Yes, I'm doing a good deed, but let me see it through. Even after I see it through, I might be in doubt. Did I do this for the sake of Allah? Was there a moment where I slipped up or not? A person thinks to himself, would I do this deed if other people did not know? Would I do it or not? So one needs to have this issue in their heart at all times. One needs to remind him or herself that one is going to be buried one day under the ground. Soon. Much sooner than one of us may think. Many a times a person doesn't think, or most of the time, most people, most of the time, the overwhelming let's say majority of the time that a person is awake, they don't think about death. The Prophet ﷺ said, the most intelligent one is the one that prepares for death. This is the most intelligent person. So a person prepares for what they're going to bring on the Day of Judgment. What are the rations, if you will, on the Day of Judgment? What are the supplies? What are the matters that a person will bring to the Day of Judgment to support themselves? Their good deeds. Their good deeds. Take the example of someone who goes camping. If they don't gather the firewood before sunset, then there's probably not going to be a fire. There's probably not going to be any food that's cooked because there's no fire. Because they delayed and they delayed and they delayed. They said, I'll go in a bit. I'll go in a bit. It's al-Dhuhr right now. Okay, it's al-Asr right now. Yeah, there's still some time. Even after the sun sets, maybe there's still some time. After the sun sets, it's not wise for a person to go out to collect firewood. They don't have a light or anything. They could be picking up a snake. They could be picking up something that is not desirable to be picked. Like this, a person doesn't delay doing the good deeds. Before they know it, it gets dark. Their eyes are closed. The soul is out of the body. So then just as that person after sunset wouldn't have firewood to prepare a fire with, like that, a person who dies without preparing, on the Day of Judgment, they would not see near enough the amount of deeds, the good deeds that they thought that they had done. Some people will be very surprised on the Day of Judgment when they see the pan of good deeds almost empty. So a person needs to take this into account. And also, sometimes, now you see, this is such a big issue, of an important issue of making the correct intention, that the devil would obviously have a few, let's say, ways into trying to confuse a person. So the devil may say to a person, he may say, do you ever do the deeds for the sake of Allah? There are always people around. Do you ever do the deeds for the sake of Allah? So you don't, huh? Okay, so you're just committing lots of sins. You're just committing major sin after major sin after major sin. Do you know what? You don't want to commit major sins, do you? This is the devil trying to advise you. You don't want to commit major sins, do you? So you know what? Don't do those deeds. Don't recite the Quran. Don't help people. Don't take part in group activities where you're made the lead, for example, because people are going to be looking at you, they're going to be praising you. Come on, you know yourself. So don't do all those deeds. Don't do them. So he strips a person of this honorable garment, which is to do the good deeds. He strips a person of that. So a person is not doing good deeds. He's moving away from the good deeds. His heart is darkening. He's pulling him away from sins. Eventually his goal is to strip this person of Iman. So the scholar said, Siru ilallahi urjan wa makasir. Meaning, stride. Be strong. Stride towards the acceptance of Allah, even if you are limping. Even if your legs are broken. So it's an analogy of striding. It represents, or it expresses a person doing the good deeds. Do the good deeds. Even if you want to get from A to B, and you have to limp to get there, don't stop. Don't say, oh no, I've twisted my ankle. No, not today. Not tomorrow. Not this life. When then? When? If a person says, no, my legs are broken, I can't make it over there. They said, Siru ilallah, which means go to Allah, i.e. go towards the acceptance, the signs of the acceptance of Allah. Do the good deeds, even if you go limping, and even if you go with broken limbs, you can crawl. Crawl. Don't stop doing the good deeds. They said, فَإِنَّ انْتِظَارَ الصِّحَّةِ بَطَالَةٌ. Because waiting to be cured, this is something that cuts a person off from a lot of good. You're waiting to be cured from a particular ailment or a condition, and you say, just a few more months. I'm going to do these treatments, and then I'm going to start doing those good deeds. For now, I'm putting them on pause. The scholars didn't advise that. They said, go. If you fear that you're going to be insincere, try to fix that, but don't stop doing the good deeds. It's a trick of the devil. It's a trick of the devil. He tells you, oh, you best be on the safe side. Don't do the good. If you try to do the good, you know yourself. You know he might say to you, you know your wretched self. So a person stays between being hopeful for the signs of the mercy of Allah and fearful of the punishment of Allah, and does as the scholars said. The scholars know what they're talking about. They actually know what they're talking about. Siru ila Allahi urjan wa makasir. Strive towards the good deeds, even if you go limping. Do them. Because whilst you do that and you make dua to Allah, oh Allah, fix my situation. Oh Allah, fix my situation. Oh Allah, fix my situation. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is eternally generous. And Allah bestows good upon whomever He wills. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, the signs of His mercy reach the kuffar in this life. In this life, the signs of the mercy of Allah reach the kuffar. They get to eat, they get to drink, they have health. For the things that they do that are apparently good, they are compensated for that in return. They're like reimbursed, if you will. They're given back. What are they given back? Food, drink, some enjoyment, some happiness when they see the faces of their children and so on. Even the kuffar, they have this... they're exposed to the signs of the mercy of Allah. وَأَنْتَ Muslim, and you're a Muslim. Why would the doors of the signs of the mercy of Allah not be open for someone like you and I? But we have to try. We have to keep going. Isn't it mentioned? The Prophet ﷺ said that a person's dua will be answered. Either he will be given what he asked for, or he will keep getting reward if the person asks and asks. He might not get what he asked for, but he'll keep getting reward. And then his dua will be answered unless he says, oh, my dua is not being answered. So then he stops. He made dua for a week. Sometimes a person might make dua they might make one dua, then they make it the next day and they think, yeah, this is good. I'm making dua. Then they make dua on the third day and they say, subhanallah, it wasn't meant to be. So they stop. They stop making dua. Like that great example that some of the scholars gave, that you knock on a door, you knock and you knock and you knock and you knock, and then you think, Then you turn away, and behind you the door creaks open and you're deaf. One might say deaf, dumb and blind. A person doesn't hear. A person doesn't hear the door has creaked open, but the person's gone. So the dua of a person would be answered until he says, Lam yustajab li. There was no jawab. There was no, my dua, it wasn't answered. And then the scholars advise, think well of Allah. Meaning, believe. Rely on Allah. Believe that your dua is going to be answered. And that you are being tested. Don't give up. Don't give up. So a person needs to work hard and not allow the devil. The devil will come in many, many different ways. So the criterion is this. What is the incentive? Why am I doing this deed? Is it because I'm being forced? If I'm being forced and I don't want to do it, then how would I be rewarded for that? So what is the incentive? What is the drive? That's what it boils down to. The Prophet ﷺ said, Inna Allah la yaqbal min al-amal illa, that Allah does not accept a deed, meaning does not reward a person for any deed except illa ma kana khalisan liwajhihi, except for what was done sincerely, purely for the sake of Allah Ta'ala. So if you want 100% for the sake of Allah, so you can't do it 95 and 5. No, as soon as it's 1% for the people, that's it. It's not 99% for the sake of Allah. No, it's that 1% for the people means it's not for the sake of Allah. Finished. So yesterday we were speaking about the hadith, the first hadith that Al-Hafiz An-Nawawi mentioned, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. The actions are by intentions. We said that the Shafi'is and the Hanafis, they differed about the meaning of this hadith. What's going in through my mind now is, should I ask them if they remember the difference between what the Shafi'is said and what the Hanafis said? It's okay, my brother Nasir and brother Mushir are both here, so we could ask them, inshallah. Or I'm thinking this time I won't ask, but at least I've given an indication that next time I will ask. Maybe, inshallah. So, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. That the actions are by intentions. The Prophet ﷺ also said in a Sahih Hadith, مَنْ هَمَّ بِالْحَسَنَةِ فَلَمْ يَعْمَلْهَا كَتَبَهَا اللَّهُ عِنْدَهُ حَسَنَةً كَامِلَةً. Whoever thinks about doing a good deed, whoever thinks about doing a good deed, but they didn't do the good deed, they thought about doing it. We make this food, and let me go give it to the neighbors. It's Ramadan, let me go give it to the neighbors. Should I? Should I? No, I should. Then you end up not doing. You forgot. You were hungry. So, mashallah, you forgot. So if a person here, they didn't end up doing the deed, but they were in between, should I, shouldn't I, but they leaned more towards doing it. Okay? So that's the criterion. That's what al-ham means. Hamma bil hasana. So the Prophet ﷺ said, man, whoever, hamma bil hasana, whoever thinks about doing a good deed. Okay? So they thought, should I, shouldn't I? But they were more on the side of, yeah, I should. They weren't 100%, yes, I should. Again, they weren't 100%, no, I shouldn't. But they were more towards, yes, I should. But they ended up not doing it. Then such a person, the Prophet ﷺ said, gets one reward, a full reward. One full reward. Even though the person didn't do the deed. But just because they intended to do it for the sake of Allah Ta'ala rewards them. Allah awards them one deed. The Prophet ﷺ said, كَتَبَهَا اللَّهُ عِنْدَهُ حَسَنَةً كَامِلَةً. A full deed, a full reward, one full reward. And the Prophet ﷺ also said, that Allah revealed, إِذَا تَحَدَّثَ عَبْدِي, if my slave تَحَدَّثَ فِي نَفْسِهِ, in himself, he says, I should do this good deed. When I go home, I'm going to pray 2 rak'ahs. When I go home, I'm going to, ring my parent because I haven't spoken to them in a long time, and I'll do it for the sake of Allah and make them happy. When they got into their car, they got a phone call. The wife said, look, we need rice. So, okay. He went off to get rice. Forget about it. He didn't ring. But he got reward. Because inside himself, he تحدث في نفسه. He spoke in himself and he said, yeah, I'm going to do that good deed. But he didn't do it. إذا تحدث في نفسه أن يعمل حسنة, to do a good deed, Allah revealed, فأنا أكتبها له حسنة كاملة. Then the angels write this good deed down. the angels write this good deed down. And likewise, if a person makes now the firm intention to do a good deed, then also he is rewarded. Abu Darda radiyallahu anhu, a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, said, "Innama man ata firashahu." Whoever comes to his bed, whoever comes to go to sleep. وَهُوَ يَنْوِي أَنْ يَقُومَ اللَّيْلِ, and he has intended to wake up and pray in the night. فَغَلَبَتْهُ عَيْنَاهُ, but he fell asleep and he remained asleep, he didn't wake up. فَلَمْ يَقُمْ حَتَّى أَصْبَحْ, and he didn't wake up until dawn broke, until Fajr came in. So he's missed that time. Abu Darda radiyallahu anhu said, كُتِبَ لَهُ أَجْرُ قِيَامِ اللَّيْلِ, that such a person would get a reward similar, not exactly the same, but similar to having prayed that night. He slept comfortably. He slept comfortably, he got a reward. Why? Because before he slept, he had the intention, I'm going to do that good deed. Remember yesterday we were talking about sleeping and having the good intention before sleeping? You have the good intention, just by that. You might think it's such a small thing that you could do. You lay on your right hand side, you intend that the Prophet slept like this, alayhi salatu wasalam, on his right hand side. I'm going to do that to get a reward. You say, well, why am I sleeping? Not just because I'm out for the count. No, but because if I don't sleep, how am I going to worship Allah tomorrow? How am I going to stand in prayer? I'm not going to be able to concentrate. I might pray 7 rak'ahs, I won't know which rak'ah I'm on. How am I going to keep my fast? How am I going to provide for my family? So a person makes intention. I'm going to sleep now to strengthen myself so I can worship Allah tomorrow. They just sleep and they get reward. Don't people have this idea of, sometimes you see advertisements that say, do you want to be relaxing and money's going in your bank account? Do you want to be on the other side of the world and your bank account, it just keeps, the money in it keeps increasing, you're not doing anything, you're relaxing. And look at this example. This person is asleep and they're getting reward. Ya salam. Why? Because they were intelligent. Because they took a lot of care of this issue. So if a person actually does the deed now, we had a person who leaned towards doing the deed but didn't do it. We had a person who had the firm intention to do the deed but didn't do it. Now this is a person that actually did the good deed. This person, for this one deed, gets 10 rewards. The good deeds are multiplied. The good deeds that a person actually does, they are multiplied. So a person, for that one deed, gets 10 rewards. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man qala as-salamu alaykum." Whoever says that for the sake of Allah, not something that may not even sound like as-salamu alaykum, but saying as-salamu alaykum, saying it properly. Not saying as-salamu alaykum. No, that's not rewardable. Not saying Assalamu alaikum. That's not rewardable. Even if a person says, I intended for the sake of Allah, the deed was invalid. This is, for those of you who don't know, this is how some people would say it from the Indian subcontinent, from Pakistan and so on. They might say it like that. It's not rewardable. It's Assalamu alaikum. قال عليه الصلاة والسلام من قال السلام عليكم كتب له 10 حسنات. Whoever says Assalamu alaikum for the sake of Allah, they would get 10 rewards. And if they say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, then they would get 20 rewards. كتب له 20. فإذا قال السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته كتب له 30 rewards. So whenever a person does a good deed, the least a person gets, when a person actually does it. In those other examples we mentioned, when a person has a good intention, they want to do it. Or a person has the firm intention, they're going to do it. But in those two situations, they end up not doing it. They get one reward. But now when they actually do it, then the least amount that it would be multiplied is by 10. And also it may be multiplied depending on the person's situation, depending on their sincerity, depending upon how hard it was to do that deed. It could be multiplied, that one deed, by 700. And even further, some deeds. Some deeds, some things that a person might deem to be very small, they may be amplified, magnified by many thousands, not even 700. So, the Prophet ﷺ, a man once came to him, and he was pulling a camel behind him. He was pulling it. He took it to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, Ya Rasulallah, O Messenger of Allah, ij'alha fi masarif al-jihad. Take this camel and use it for al-jihad. Get one of the Muslims to ride the camel, take it, load it, do whatever you want with it, for al-jihad. So, the Prophet ﷺ, it was revealed to him some information. So he said, Inna laka biha 700 naqatin fil jannah. Because you did this one deed, you will have 700 of the camels, of this type of camel, in Al-Jannah, in paradise, for that one deed. For that one deed. So Allah gives to whomever He wills. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala mentioned, or rather the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, that Allah revealed that fasting in Ramadan is a special deed. Allah revealed about as-sawm, Allah revealed فَإِنَّهُ لِي, meaning this is a very special deed. Why? Because a person prevents themselves from eating. The next time you get hungry, which is let's say around 5:30, when you get really hungry, when you're really going through the motions, left and right, not wanting people to talk to you, or some people may be like that, or when you feel really thirsty at around 12 noon and you think, how am I going to survive? It's only 12 o'clock. You've all been there, I'm sure, right? When you feel that, think, I'm doing this for the sake of Allah. You're preventing yourselves from drinking for the sake of Allah. You don't think Allah will reward you for that? You're preventing yourselves from eating, right? And it is agitating. It is. When you feel that, you could, and you know what would do away with that? A third, or even not even a third, like a bit of a date, you put it in your mouth, you feel like 10 men. You have a date, you say, let's pray the Maghrib. Really good. It's like that. You think, can't eat anymore. You had a date and some water and you think that's it. Think about that. You could easily do away with that hunger, but you say, no, I'm doing it for the sake of Allah. I'm not eating, I'm not drinking, I'm not going to engage in certain sins that I might have, wal-'iyadhu billah. Were I not fasting, I'm not even going to do them. But for the sake of Allah, you abstain from all these things. You don't think Allah is going to reward you? That's why Allah revealed about as-siyam, about fasting. Allah revealed, innahu li. This is a great, 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 great deed. Literally what that means is, fasting is mine, meaning it's a deed I created, yani Allah. It's a deed I created. وَأَنَا أَجْزِي بِهِ, and I compensate for it. Meaning whoever fasts for my sake, for the sake of Allah, whoever fasts for my sake, I will compensate for it. So no one knows the reward that you attain for fasting other than Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So each time you feel hungry, each time you get up in the morning, at a time at which you would usually have breakfast, intend for the sake of Allah. Again, renew your intention. Every time you renew your intention, you get reward. Every time. So you intend for the sake of Allah that, no, I'm not having breakfast. Why? Because I'm worshipping Allah. I'm not getting that coffee that I'm craving. Oof, I'm craving that coffee. Why? Because I'm worshipping Allah. Don't you know? It's Ramadan. I'm fasting. Why? For the sake of Allah. I'm obeying my Lord. And then it is as the Prophet ﷺ said, لِلصَّائِمْ فَرْحَتَانِ. There are two joys for the fasting person. Two joys. لِلصَّائِمِ فَرْحَتَانِ. One of those joys, he said, ﷺ, is when a person sees the reward. Imagine, a person sees mountains and mountains of reward for one fast that they did properly. Imagine that. So this is one of the two joyous occasions, two joyous moments that a person will experience. He said, alayhi salatu wasalam, لِلصَّائِمْ, for the fasting person, farhatani, two farhas, two joys, happinesses. One of them, عِنْدَ لِقَاءِ رَبِّهِ, meaning when a person sees the reward for their fasting. You know, and the other joy is, he said, عِنْدَ فِطْرِهِ عِنْدَ الْإِفْطَارِ. Because the person, when they eat that first bit of food, and mashallah, it's nice. Even if it's water, the drops go down. So though you say, where have you been? And obviously you make dua. Alhamdulillah alladhi. Allahumma inni laka sumtu. But you feel it, don't you? You feel happy. You feel happy, and that happiness itself, it pushes you, it drives you to pray al-maghrib, and then to do your tahseen, and then, mashallah, and then, we're ready for the next day. Bring it on. Bring on day, was it day 4? Tomorrow? Of Ramadan?
Yeah, 4.
Mashallah. See, one might say, lost in the happiness. MashaAllah. Yeah, alhamdulillah. Fasting is a great deed that we should not neglect. Okay, we'll stop here today, inshaAllah ta'ala. Let's recite Al-Fatiha like we usually do. And then everybody individually makes dua. So you recite Al-Fatiha now for the sake of Allah, because Al-Fatiha was revealed not once but twice. And it is a great surah in the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ recommended that we recite it for many different things. So let's recite it now for the sake of Allah. When we finish, we ask Allah to grant a reward similar to what we just received for reciting Al-Fatiha, inshaAllah, to the Prophet ﷺ, to our mashayikh, our teachers, especially Shaykh Abdullah al-Harari. And we ask Allah, we will all ask Allah to grant the Muslims safety, to protect the Muslims all around the world, especially in Gaza now that we see what is happening. And like I said, all around the world. Al-Fatiha.
اللهم أوصل مثل ثواب ما قرأت إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وإلى مشايخنا وبالخصوص الشيخ عبد الله الهرري.
When we're making dua, then, like I said, a person should, the Prophet ﷺ said, as our teachers taught us, that you should be firm, you should rely on Allah, and believe that what you're asking for is going to happen. This doesn't mean that one would be arrogant. No, a person, however, is confident because they rely on Allah. And this is known as, in the dua, is known as Husnul Dhanni Billah. And you should try to make dua whenever you can, whether you're walking or you're driving or... Remember, you don't need to raise your hands to make dua. Okay? You don't need to raise your hands to make dua. You do not know when a person's dua may be answered. You might make a dua and forget about it. And later on you realize, oh wait a second, my dua was answered. I made that dua. So what if you never make dua? Okay. Let's say La ilaha illallah 3 times and as-salah ala nabi. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Barakallah. Whoever hasn't made the intention to fast tomorrow, then that was a good time.